It's about from I, me, myself to we, ourselves. So how is this switch going to happen, and what do we do for that? So that's the question that I was trying to probe into and look at literature. So I'll primarily cover a few points that I learned from the literature. I'm just going to put aside all my views related to that and just going to present to you what the authors have talked about. Okay? Maybe some reciprocation would be helpful because this is okay. So let's start with down memory lane. Most of you before IIT, whenever there is an issue with audio, etc., you have to tell me. Okay?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right. So down memory lane, if we look back a little bit, it has always been all about competition. Some of you may be exceptions, but for most of us, when we look back just before IITM, it has always been all about competition. For some of us, it starts from class 7 itself, and it has been this way all through. For some of us, it may be from kindergarten, depending on how our parents looked at education. Right? If your mom asks you what happened to 5 marks out of 100, where you lost out 5 marks and secured 95, instead of asking about 95%, supposing your parent asks you about where you lost that 5%, your upbringing is about looking at competition. And this is not new, but it has been something that has been happening for a long time in our culture. And these few years before IIT, we used to get up early to go for coaching. In fact, in order to join a good coaching class, we would have another entrance exam that we have to prepare for, and so on. Right? And if there is one exam where we didn't score well, let's say only 95%, you go back home and show your marks. There may be an atmosphere where people at home would looking at you as if someone has lied. I'm not sure whether I'm exaggerating. And what happens to you when you feel this way as an atmosphere at home? You need to heal this wound of getting only 95%, and you want to prepare for a better performance. And it was always about competition. That's the way it has been. And at the end of it all, you emerged as winners. Because the goal was set for you, it was very clear, and you emerged as winners and entered IITM. So we came to IITM. The initial phase of IITM was such that everyone else came from similar background of doing very well in school, and you are among 1,000 of them. Every one of you have been almost top in the class, and 1,000 of you now are put together in an atmosphere here. And suddenly you find yourself amidst a lot of best people around, and just a second. And you're no more in the limelight. Sometimes this D and E comes as a shock to you, at least in the initial period. And your confidence is shaken. The habit of winning is still there in your mind, right? And you think for yourself, I've always been a winner all through, and how do I now shake it off, pull it off? And it depresses you, right? Because the competition is ingrained. You have developed this competition all over, and you even won. And therefore, competition is ingrained in you because of the huge pressure that was around you. And you still feel the pressure even though, you have already come to IIT. Sometimes you get lost because it is not happening, right? The conditions don't remain the same as in school, and that puts you sort of off guard. So I started looking at the literature, and the first one that I went through was a book by Raghunathan,
Raghunathan, yes.
who talks about sprinting the marathon. And he compares a competitive exam to life. Winning was all that was the condition of winning, etc., seems to have not changed. You have a lot more time. You realize you are going towards a goalpost which is shifting or probably different. And then you suddenly realize it's not about sheer strength of getting past the exams, but the ability to look at competition differently, right? In a sprint, there is no time to correct mistakes. If you have made a mistake, let's say the initial start is not good, or in between somebody has passed you, etc., it is not possible for you to correct mistakes. But in a marathon, it is not like that. Doesn't matter if the initial start is not good. It is not necessary that you will lose the marathon. And you do seem to have more time than what you had for preparing for JEE and so on. And you start to realize it is you who have to deal with, and this self-victory started to become more important for you. Not in terms of competitive, but to find out what it means to say self-victory. Is it self-victory because if I can do better than what I did before, or is it related to someone else? Am I comparing? Right? That's the question that now arises in your mind. And you realize that the great start that you had is not a guarantee to win this marathon called life. That's where the journey begins. But the mindset is yet to change. You've been on top of everything. You topped all the tests. In fact, for every test, the aim was to be on top. And that's what winning meant for you. And everything you took up, even if it is sports or culturals or curricular, you wanted to be on the top. That was the mindset. And there is this reluctance that you see in your own self. Let me give an example of elections which recently occurred, right? So I was a witness to all the drama that was happening because the reports used to come almost every day. Any of you participated in elections?
Elections.
Yes, sir.
You did, okay. And you started to realize that winning an election is not like cracking an exam. It is more, you need to win the hearts of people, talk their language, skills that you have to imbibe in terms of convincing people that you will make up a good secretary, right? But this mindset of winning at all costs is there in your mind. So many contestants, there are a few who did not do this, but many contestants resorted to bad practices. Whether it is about campaigning, where the rules are broken, or blaming each other of going against the rule, etc., etc. And when you lost it, you realize to yourself that you're a bad loser. A bad loser is one who does not accept the losing. We rarely understood what the feeling meant so far, and therefore you feel shattered, especially when you lose. Even today, I think this happens. We are into relative grading, and therefore you want to hide your notes and not share with others. Because the question that arises in your mind is, if I give, won't I become a loser and the other wins because he or she has my notes? In fact, let me share the experience that I had in my strength of materials exam. I had a class of about 120 or so. So I wanted to conduct an exam which was different, where it could be primarily a play kind of an exam. It would run into about 2.5 hours or so, but essentially people would play. And the main aim of the entire quiz or exam was to get people to share what they know. So when you share with somebody what you know, you get certain points. So that was the game all about. It all ended, and I had put up the marks. You won't believe the number of trips that came up when I released the marks. So lot of trips saying this way, that way, etc., etc. I think it is unfair. This exam is unfair, etc., etc. Unthinkable number of them came and argued with me that this is not how an exam has to be conducted,
So
etc.
one second. So can everybody hear? I think Nishant is unable to
Yes.
hear. So if there's any issue, just flag it up.
Yeah,
Otherwise,
please flag,
we
because
can't.
I'm just assuming that all of you are able to hear.
Yeah, I can hear,
Yeah.
but yeah.
Understood.
Nishant, you have to log off and log in.
Shall I move on?
Okay, sir. Yeah, continue, sir.
You might have scored very well in academics, in sports, even extracurricular events. But you start to realize, oh my God, to win a girlfriend or a boyfriend is not similar. That winning seems to be very different. Those realizations start to happen. Winning seems to be something different from what one is used to. And therefore, the question
Sorry to about the SOM class. So people did cooperate, or they
people cooperated. The exam went on okay.
Okay.
But those who could not, who did not share with others, right? Those students came and said, no, that by sharing, I'm just sharing my marks with them, and therefore it is unfair.
So this mind shift, I think, of say, for example, no invigilators or a cooperative model of.
This is a cooperative model that I introduced, thinking that the students, see, an exam is, to me, an exam is like another class, where a student is very attentive and willing to learn that particular aspect if that kind of mindset is there. Right? And therefore, if one has cracked the problem, will he or she share how he or she cracked the problem? Was the primary question. Right? And I looked at, okay, if you shared, you get some points, additional points, you get some bonus. And therefore, this started to occur. I mean, there was competition, but I also had to cooperate, and these two didn't go together in the minds.
Right.
That was the reason. Therefore, the question in the mind sometimes occurs: if you are lucky, is what does winning mean in life? What does it mean to be number one? Are you able to see me?
Yes.
For example, V.K. Singh, who was general, who was G General retired, was sitting at the feet of Anna Hazare, who was just an Havaldar in the army. Now you suddenly start to question, who is number one here? Right? You realize it is not about positions that you hold. It is not necessarily that you top the class that seemed to matter. It is something beyond. If this question arises in your mind, you are very lucky. And you start to realize that there is some other set of skills that is necessary. And therefore, this question starts to become stronger and stronger in your mind. Well, then, what is success in life? How do I now define success in life? There is a confusion that occurs in the mind. I have two thoughts that came from two books that I went through. One is Adam Grant, titled Give and Take. I'll also explain to you the other one, which is more concept oriented. Okay? Adam Grant came up with three characters. One is called a giver, the other is a taker, and the third one is called a matcher. Giver is one who is always willing to give. Whatever he or she has, is always willing to give. Taker is one who always takes, not gives, but always takes. Doesn't matter how it comes, they keep taking. And matchers are the ones who ask this question, I'm giving it to you, what will you give me? Right? So these are the three characters, let us say, that I can locate a particular person. I can locate a particular person to be a giver or a taker or a matcher, let us say. Who do you think among these three would be a winner ultimately, who are on top of the social pyramid? Any answers? He did a survey also.
I think it's matches.
Yeah. So, who's saying this?
Amartya.
Amartya says matchers.
Yes, sir.
Any other answer? Any other person who can? Of course, just three of you with different answers will fill the entire set of answers. Let's look at what happens. Okay. When Adam started to look at each of those people who are on top and characterize them as givers, takers, and matchers, at the initial stage, he found that a lot of them were takers who exploited people to get enough, etc., etc. When he expanded the time frame, by the way, this is tend to give how many can I help is the giver's mentality. How many can I suck from or exploit is the taker's mentality. Matchers is I give you this, you give it back to me. Right? This is very common among many people. Right? Anyway, going back to this survey, when he expanded the time frame and looked at ultimately who won this game, meaning how many of them are idolized by the society, he strangely found that givers got the limelight. So this sort of triggered a question in him. How is it that givers get the limelight? Right? So when he probed further, he realized something. Giver looks like a sucker, just give, right? Just cooperate, give. The souls that gave notes to you, I still remember room number 221 of Godav, one of my friends. His room would always be open. You can go and ask any question, he would answer. And this is during quiz time, right? I still remember in the morning I had a sort of mini reunion and we recounted how it was to go to his room, right? He was a giver. He understood something, he wanted to have the same understanding possible among the others, right? Why did it happen? When people network, let us say, I'm going to pick two of you, let's say Pranav and Aditya, right? When Pranav goes and asks Aditya, can you share your notes? and Aditya looks at it. He hesitates, let us say. All right. What happens to Pranav is he goes back with empty-handed, without the notes. But things don't end there, because this is not a game where there is only one. It's not one exam that you write. At IIT, you must have realized by now you write 100 exams, right? So the mindset that Aditya had of not sharing what he had. Aditya, it's okay, right? If I
Yeah,
take
it's okay.
your name and Pranav's name.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir, it's fine.
Okay. So what happens to Pranav is Pranav thinks, oh, okay, Aditya is not somebody who is willing to share. Let us say 10 years pass by. What would be in the mind of Pranav? Pranav would think, oh my God, this guy is a selfish guy. Now Aditya seems to need a job. He was looking for a job, and Pranav has become a CEO. Aditya comes. Of course, if Pranav were a giver, he would have given the job. But it is not only two people that make up the world. Our network is so vast that people start to realize the game that takers play, right? And therefore, ultimately, what happens is you are likely to succeed if you are giver, because the network that you have formed, the goodwill that you have given to this network of people is so high that, let us say you float something in public saying that, okay, I'm going to do this particular effort. More and more people would want to be on your side, because your character was to be able to give, and that appreciation comes up over a long term. And this is basically the framework that Adam Grant found out, that ultimately it is the givers that win the game of life. I don't know if you want to call it win, but definitely win the hearts of people, right? Let me move on to the other. Are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Okay. The second one is about herd mentality. All these are connected. The concepts that I'm discussing are all connected. And it has to do with moving from I to we. What is this herd mentality? It's very apt for this coronavirus situation, COVID situation. Herd mentality is we are influenced by what is happening around us. For example, everyone in the top, let's say, is going for a Google job. You value that Google job so much that you also want to go for it. Perhaps that's the reason why you came to IIT also. I'm not saying herd mentality is wrong, but herd mentality also is an abstraction to be a leader. The leader is the one that ultimately wins the game, is my point of view. Because we gauge the entire thing through the people who are on top. But is it fatalistic? Let's examine it. What happens in this COVID times is you suddenly start to realize, oh my God, the supply probably may go down, and the supply and demand may not match, and therefore, if I don't hoard enough, I'll be the loser, right? So what happens is every store becomes empty. And this is exactly what has happened in the US. If you are in sync with the news in the US, every store, doesn't matter whether it is Walmart or Kmart, whatever, all of them are empty. Why is it empty? Because people wanted to just hoard, right? And therefore they're empty. If they're empty, then the supply is now gone, right? Very similar to what happens when water shortage occurs in Chennai. But store has never had this kind of a problem earlier. It was sort of a distributed buying, right? So they could store enough as and when people bought, it was possible to get the inventory. Okay? And this was happening, but suddenly they are not able to meet the demand that has occurred. And this is a false demand, right? Is it good for everyone? That's the question. Is it a gain for everyone? Fortunately, what has happened in India is there were enough measures taken that all the essential items were made available enough before the lockdown, so that people did not feel that there's going to be this scarcity. Let me hold. Though a few of them would have done it, but it is not as much as what has happened in the US. Of course, same thing happened with Chennai AIDS when water was there. There's a beautiful example that Dr. Raghunathan gives, where in one house, let us say the water was just trickling in the tap, and I need to get more water. So what I do is I go purchase a pump and come home, set it up, and I get water. Now, so far so good, okay. But what happens basically is the neighbor realizes, oh my God, this guy is getting water. The news spreads very fast. What does the neighbor do? Neighbor goes and purchases water, right? And this chain continues. For some time, probably a few days, you do get water because you started off first. But after that, the same trickle would continue because supply is the same, right? But we don't understand that. We go as a herd and do things depending on what is happening around us. So that brings us to a particular concept called prisoner's dilemma. How many of you have heard of prisoner's dilemma? I'm sure students in physics must have heard, management probably. Yeah? Let me describe prisoner's dilemma and see if we can connect to what we are going to discuss about. Let us say we have two people, prisoner A and prisoner B, who were caught for some activity, illegal activity. And they can either, so they are put in two separate jails. There are two things that you can do, either you can confess or you can remain silent. So the jailer tells them that if both of them confess, then they will be put behind bars of 5 years and let out. But if one confesses and the other remains silent, the one who is remaining silent would get 20 years of imprisonment, whereas the one who has confessed will be will go scot-free. And let us say the similar thing happens if it is B and A. Okay. And also, the jailer says, in case both prisoner A and prisoner B remain silent, then they get 1 year imprisonment both. Which one would happen in a normal scenario?
Both of them remain silent.
That's what we think, right?
Yeah.
But I have to now look at whether I should be let free and doesn't have to be inside the jail, or I spend 1 year. So if I look at my own self, and if I want to maximize my gain, then what happens is I would probably confess, and thinking that I will not serve any prison statement. But what really happens is both of you confess. In reality, what happens is both of you confess, and therefore each of you get 5 years in prison. This is what is called Nash's equilibrium. But then the best solution, as such, that we all know, is if both remain silent. How does both remain silent? Both remain silent is possible if only if each of them cooperate with the other. Even if one of them does not cooperate, you end up with either 5 years or 20 years. Right? This is the prisoner's dilemma. Right? Many times what happens is, you can compare it to many different scenarios. It could be, let's say, beating a traffic light, right? So if I beat the traffic light, I'll be able to go fast. But if I beat the traffic light, there is a possibility of accident. And if the other one also thinks about beating the traffic light, accident is more or less sure, right? So you can compare it with many situations. In fact, I want to share one of the situations that happened in our department. We had a head of the department. This was about 10, 15 years ago. He realized that many students, research scholars are supposed to come in the morning, sign up the attendance register, get on the HOD's office before they go for work. Because remember, they are paid the TA shift or the RA shift. What happened was he found that most of them were attending as per the attendance register, but he also found that some of them were absent. But in reality, some of them were absent, but attendance register said they were present. So he got very angry. He said, "Okay, I have to punish these people." So what he did was he went and announced to all the research scholars that they have to assemble, and he would sort of dole out the punishment for everyone. Okay? This included those who did not do this and those who did this. In a way, it was unfair because if he is going to dole out punishment for everyone, those who have been doing faithfully would feel, would lose heart. Those who have not been, it did not matter to them. Very similar to the 0-20 that you're talking about. And the head of the department was thinking of 5 years, 5 years. But what happened was, he said, "Okay, I'll let you go free if the person," so he found that there were 2 or 3 people that definitely were doing this. So he said, "Okay, I will let all of you free if those who have done it raise their hands or stand up." There was silence for some time. Slowly, one of the girls among the research scholars stood up and said, "Sorry, I was also one of them who did it." But he didn't. So he said, "Okay, now that I found who it is that was doing, others can. She should be getting. She shouldn't be getting scholarship for 3 months or something like that." After a few seconds, one more gentleman rose up. Another few seconds, one more gentleman. By the time it was a minute, almost all of them had gotten up from their seat. And it was very puzzling for the head of the department. Now, how do I now look at this scenario? He had no other go but to let them off. They went scot-free. The reason why this happened was he didn't realize that there was so much cooperation among the research scholars. Though it was not something that the research scholars should have done, but at least the research scholars started to look at a global maximizing or global optimizing instead of local optimization, right? And therefore, one would be able to connect this prisoner's dilemma in life. And in life, it is not one single occasion that it occurs over and over. Even for the most selfish, if they are able to cooperate, the punishment is less. If you look at global perspective, it is better to cooperate than confessing, right? In a way, life is an iterative prisoner's dilemma. Not one single time, but many times, this prisoner's dilemma continues. As we saw in the giver-taker example. But if you look at physics talks about Nash equilibrium, which is the opposite, where if such a scenario occurs, it is the scenario of 5 years that will that will show up as the best solution in a simulation. That's exactly what occurs in as far as traffic in India is concerned. The question that we are now asking is, are we intelligent enough? Are we able to maximize in terms of coming up with the best solution? If it is traffic, we are talking about, are we able to minimize the number of accidents? That's why giver wins ultimately. If you look at India, Pakistan, what happened 15 years ago is India conducted this nuclear weapon test. India was not a rich country at that time. Not that it is rich right now. Pakistan was very poor. What Pakistan did was, in order to make sure that they also wanted to show that they are a nuclear country, they spent a huge sum of money in order to conduct the nuclear test successfully. So what happens is, you put in your resources into something just because you want to just equal the other. Very similar to the first solution of prisoner's dilemma. They spent all the money in that. If you spend all the money on that, you remain poor. Today we see this a lot. Whenever there is a possibility of war, the countries around the world start to now pitch in, want to find out how that war can be stopped. The reason is, war is not the best solution. Both countries lose. And therefore, cooperation is the best solution for global growth. Once we realize this, we already moved from I to we. So share your notes. By sharing your notes, it is possible to win hearts rather than the local win that you will have. Because you will interact with huge number of individuals ultimately. The way you give back with bad ones is to stop interacting with them. So what will happen with the bad ones? Bad ones also get from the giver. But the thing is, you have to understand that the world is full of all the three kinds of people. So when they encounter a bad one, their interaction with the bad one will stop. Unless it is between bad and bad. They will not come back to them, including those givers. And therefore, ultimately, the bad ones will lose. All these will work only in short term, but in long term, it is not going to work. That's a realization that we start to have. Of course, you need to have a lot of people that you interact with in order to understand and imbibe the system. People were not fools earlier. They think about the karma theory. I don't want to go into all those details, but they also say in Tamil, Devan Nindrikulla, means time will decide what to do with the bad one and the good one. In fact, every religion prescribes charity as a part of way of life. Okay, whether it is Ramadan or Nishkamya Karma in Hindu philosophy, or show your other cheek is Christianity. Every religion prescribes charity as one essential part of way of life. Perhaps it is because of this global optimization that they wish to look at. Of course, things have changed. It is becoming more communalized rather than what is aimed at as such. So this is broadly what I wanted to touch upon as far as how a leader should think, how one who is an intelligent person should think towards a global optimization. If you have any questions I can take before we go to the next part of this session, where how do I develop a global optimization as an individual? You can throw questions, we can discuss.
Sir, I have a senior who is like this giving person, and one day he told me that he's taken advantage of.
Of course, yes. Givers are taken advantage of.
So
Givers are taken advantage of.
what should he do now?
And it's a short term. Tomorrow you will see that the person is appreciated. over a longer period of time. Life is not lived in a short period. That's what we start to think ultimately. Right? When we don't think, we are not as intelligent as we should be. At least after looking at all this prisoner's dilemma and giver-taker findings. Right? So tell your senior that it's a good thing that he is doing, and you also can follow the same footsteps.
Yes. Sir, I want to give one example to what you discussed. So we have, I think everyone is aware of the Lend-Lease bill by America during the World War II time. And there is this foreign minister's aid also. So that really helped America to get a foothold. I mean, it's like giving away money to all its allies, and then it got foothold into their countries.
Little louder.
There is this Marshall Plan by America. So it's like giving away their money. I mean, it's giving away their taxpayers' money to other countries. So in return, they got friendship and they got power. I think it's a great example to what you mentioned.
Yeah, in fact, you may be wondering why, of course, it's a bigger game that the countries play, but in terms of what a bigger power can do if they are good givers, is they can avoid wars from happening. They can sort of control to a certain extent to achieve this global optimization. Why they should be thinking about it? Because if they don't think about it, then this global optimization may not occur. And ultimately, they will become losers.
So that's it. Thank you.
Hello, sir. Yeah, this is Masni here. The slides are really good and some really good points in all the slides. Cooperation, collaboration is very important. But don't you think that the point of all the slides should be that we should be very grateful and appreciative of people who are helping us? Because as Amartya Prem said, people who are givers, there can be a situation where advantage might be taken of them. So in that sense, if we want to really inculcate this habit of giving, we have to first somewhere bring that change about in ourselves and recognize whenever a lending hand is given to us, or if someone helps us out.
Very nice question.
Really, yeah.
Yeah. So I'll discuss that when it comes to the next. Basically, if you have to climb to that level, first is as per Stephen Covey, he says there has to be self-victory, that you should be able to win your own self and become independent of those things that happen to you before you can get into this kind of leadership role where interdependence becomes important. In the short term, yes, in the short term it is like that, but in the long term, one is sure to win if they cooperate and collaborate. People have simulated and found that it is true. Adam Grant's survey points to givers as the ultimate winners. They are modest too. Any other?
I think, so in the book, thank you, sir. Thanks for reminding me of this book. It's a very nice book. Please do read, all of you. So there's a lot of research that has gone into giving and positive emotions. So that's one side bonus that we have. So giving really enhances our positivity.
And why positivity is because it is a global optimizer. Why positivity is because it's a global optimizer. It influences other people too.
Right.
Favorably. Of course, I'm just looking at science behind it, but the reason why I brought this up is many times we look at short frame of term gain, right? Short term losing or short term gain. Our view does not expand.
Right. So
the expansion has to occur by understanding these these facts that have come up.
So Professor LSG regularly talks about window of perception in systems thinking, where we expand our window of perception to
expanding the window of perception.
Expanding.
Right. Any other others?
So now is the time to unmute. Come on.
Yeah.
Do you think you can use whatever sir mentioned? The others, do you think this is possible? Any
Are you
challenges?
able to relate to some of those? Let me hear from some of you. Are you able to relate to what we discussed so far?
Sir, I have a question right now. So my question is, so if someone is a giver, someone is a taker, and one is matcher, then how one person can come to, like, for example, if I'm a taker and I want to become a giver, then how can I make that transition happen in my life? What are those small steps that I should take?
Yeah, that's the next set of slides that I'm going to show. Okay. Right now, we just understood that it is important for us to be the global optimizers. When we take up that leadership role, how do we make it possible to be global optimizers? So what habits do we have to develop?
Okay, and I think one person asked that if I think Aditya only asked his senior was facing a problem, and you told that it's about the period of time. So how you distinguish a period of time to be a short period of time and a long period of time? For someone, 1 year can be a long period of time, and for someone that might be a short period of time. Then how you actually control yourself that if I'm a giver and I'm tired giving people, then at that time how should I reconvince myself that I should wait for more time? There are good people in the world.
Very good point. Very good question. In fact, you've heard of bird's eye view, right? Many times we are short-sighted in looking at gains and losses. And therefore, we don't see the bigger picture. The moment we start to, that's what Vijay is talking about as expanding the window of perception. The moment we start to expand and are able to see a bigger picture and our role in that bigger picture, it becomes more and more clear that it is good to be a giver, even though it's in the short run, the gains may not be there.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Others, any of you have anything to share? I'm sure every one of you would have encountered givers, takers, matchers. You yourself can also reflect and think about various incidents in your life that this could have occurred, right? Where you get angry when somebody is a very let's say intense taker, right? Sometimes you also get into the mode because you are not able to see anything else but winning. Any other point? Okay. So,
the perspective of taker is fully negative. Is it so, or
yeah? So takers have to be there. If takers are not there, where will the givers be? Right.
So there is a place for them as
there is a place for takers also. You're right. But in the sense of you climbing up, so I'm now looking at sprinting and marathon. Connecting to sprinting and marathon. If you think it is a marathon race that you are in, as far as your life is concerned, but perhaps you can view the necessity for being a giver. Though there are certain times that you may be a taker.
I think paid forward has a good combination of you're giving, but you're ensuring that somebody else will.
Yeah. So, for example, if let us say there is a giver and the taker does not reciprocate, people do watch it. Right? When people do watch it, ultimately, over a long run, they build a particular notion of that particular person, right? That's what I'm talking about. Ravi, you had a point to share?
Sir, yeah, so what I was saying is if someone is a really efficient matcher, so whenever he interacts with someone, he matches very efficiently and optimizes the gains of both the parties. Then at every point there is an optimization, and instead of so what my point is, so we talk about givers and we say that in long terms givers are the winners, but if we are optimizing perfectly well in short term, the matches will be winners at every point of time.
See, that is okay if the local and global optimizations are the same. The optimization that you do at the local level and at the global level become the same. Take, for example, two interactions. In the two interactions that we are looking at, let us say the scenario happens like what you pointed out. If it is just two interactions, then what you say has meaning. But if it is a million interactions that take place, in the long run, for a large network of interactions, the best solution is what we are discussing about.
Understood, sir. Understood.
So matches are okay. Matches assets matches will be able to interact okay, and that's it. But who will ultimately go to the top of the pyramid? If we look at who will go to the top of the pyramid, it's not that matches mentality is wrong, but if you look at who have raised up to that level on at the top of the society, what they have found is it is the givers who have taken that top spot.
Okay, sir. Okay. Thank you, sir.
Because many of you have this the mental mindset of winning, but how do I use that winning to the advantage of both me and others? That's the question. Any other point, Sajid?
Sir, I was thinking the problem with time, no, sir. The takers may feel happy in the short run, but the givers will feel fulfilled in the long run. So
Yes.
there is happiness and there is fulfillment. Happiness is a transient.
Yeah, you're right.
Happiness is a transient feeling.
Yeah.
Fulfillment is a long term. And in one of the classes also, I was talking about the same thing. Instead of give and take, I was talking about people with serving mindset and a seeking mindset.
Exactly.
Servers meaning
Fantastic.
givers and seekers meaning takers.
Hmm.
And all along history, all stupidity has been done by the seekers.
Yeah, it's if you look at we as faculty, it is not about in the awards we win, etc., etc. One email from a student long time back who remembers you and sends an email saying that I was in your class and this is something that I learned. Thank you for it. Right? It happens after a long time. It happens after 15 years, 20 years. I keep getting emails from students who graduated long time back. Right? Completely unintended. One of the students said, you said this, do you remember? It exactly happened that way. I didn't remember anything at all. But the thing is, for them, that was a moment of learning. Yeah. Shivani.
I think even I agree with Sajid on this point. I remember we talked about including everyone slowly in our circle of belonging.
Yes,
I think we stop seeing giving and seeking as a transaction when we include them in our
when we live in total societal consciousness, the self and the society are one and the same.
Yes, something like that.
Yeah, I mean that's what moving from I to we. Yeah, this is only I'm just giving a background that will help us understand. Some of you will be would fit in naturally as givers or takers, right? And it's a habit that can be formed, and therefore it is not something that is ingrained in people.
And one point I have to add about giving is like even in giving, you have to think at long-term giving. Like the problem which happens is, let's say I see a poor person and I give him food. Okay, so I've given it. Okay, so I'm a giver. It's not like that. Actually, you have to ask the question, why is he poor? You feed a man for a day.
Details, but
No.
Either way actually have succeeded. I mean, it's not necessary that only those who have contributed without thinking about all this, whether it is going to, it is about the phrase that they use is, do you want to provide a fish to the other person or learn
teach a man how to fish?
The other person to fish.
Yeah.
Right. Yes, that is more effective way of giving. But then giving itself has ended up in terms of going top of the pyramid.
Yes. But the real top of the pyramid had put in a construct to give.
Possible. I mean, and in fact, probably givers start to think about that mode of
exactly. Yeah.
As they learn. I have taken cues directly from Stephen Covey's book on 7 Habits of Highly Effective. Let's just watch one of those videos.
Link in the description so you can see the first 3 habits. In the first 3 habits,
you're able to hear now, right?
From being a dependent
to
an independent person,
yes, we can hear.
by being proactive, beginning with the end in mind, and putting first things first. The first 3 habits are about self-mastery. They help you become more effective as an individual by developing inner strength, character, purpose, and values. The next 3 habits that I'm going to cover in this video move you from being independent to being interdependent. Again, interdependence is the highest level. Dependence is like the relationship between a child and a mother, or even sometimes between a boss and an employee. It's the attitude of you. To move from dependence to independence, you have to nail the first 3 habits. Again, be proactive, begin with the end in mind, and put first things first. This is the attitude of I.
So what he prescribes here is, it is important for you to have this self-mastery before you go into interdependence, else the value of interdependence goes away.
This is where you're thinking like a team, a family and a teamwork mentality. We accomplish what we want together. It's the attitude of we. We can combine our different talents and our abilities to make something even greater. Habits 4 through 6 help you deal with people, teach you how to read the needs, and empathize and cooperate with people. They help you build strong relationships. Habit 4 is think win-win. There are 6 types of personal and business relationships. There's lose-win and win-lose, which is the typical mentality for most. In order for me to win, you have to lose. This is the mindset of someone is going to get the good end of the deal and someone is going to get screwed. This is a poor mindset to have, but people live with this outlook because most people have a scarcity mindset. They have a lack of abundance mindset. There's also a lose-lose relationship, which of course is no good for anybody. And I have a quick example for this one. I had a friend who got divorced and he was about to retire from the military. Instead of retiring and getting a pension, which half of it would go to his wife, he got out at 19 years and got no pension. In this case, they both lost out. Then you have the win, and this is not really a relationship at all. This is you just getting what you want and not providing value to anyone else, and it's pretty much just selfish. Next, there is no deal. This one's pretty much neutral. If you can't come to a deal where you both benefit, then there's no deal. And then we come to the best type of relationship, which is a win-win. We want to look for win-win relationships. We want to search for mutual benefit, and we need to have the mindset that there's plenty out there. There's abundance. We can share knowledge. We can gain. We can profit together. We don't need to crush each other out. We can work together instead. Life isn't a zero-sum game. So look at every situation with a win-win mentality. A quick example of a win-win is, hey, I buy a book for $20 and I get all this insight and knowledge, and the author also benefits by getting $20. So again, seek win-win relationships. If it's not going to be mutually beneficial, then default to no deal. Habit 5 is seek first to understand, then to be understood. Stephen tells a great story here. Stephen and his son have a talk, and Stephen can't get through to his son about some issue they're having. He then goes to a friend for advice. He tells a friend, I just can't understand my son sometimes. He won't listen to me. The friend says, hold on a second. Let me get this straight. You can't understand your son because he won't listen to you. I thought that to understand someone, you have to listen to them. That's a great point, isn't it? For us to understand someone, we have to listen to them, not the other way around. It's common sense, really, but most of the time this is how our relationships play out. We often get mad at people because they don't think the way we think. We all see the world differently. We all see the world through our own perceptions and opinions based on our own experiences. You can't understand someone unless you really listen to them. Try to understand their perspective first, Try to understand how they're feeling, why. This is called empathic listening. This is the highest level of listening, the others being ignoring, pretending to listen, selective hearing, and attentive listening. None of those are very effective, but most of us listen using one of these levels. Most people don't listen with the intent to understand. We listen with the intent to reply before the other person even finishes. So before you judge, before you take action, before you contribute, just listen. So if your wife says, "I hate my job," instead of providing advice or repeating what she said, which is a typical response, you rephrase the content and reflect the feeling and say something like, "You're not enjoying your job and you're feeling upset about it." This gets you both on the same side of the table. You're listening with the intent to understand intellectually and emotionally, and then you can move forward to repair the situation. The time to be understood is when the conversation leads to logic and advice is requested. When you go down this path, maybe she'll eventually respond with, "Should I look for another job?" This is when you can seek to be understood. This is when you can provide your advice. But if it goes back to an emotional level, then you listen again empathetically until logic is brought back. This creates an atmosphere of caring. Habit 6 is synergy. The idea behind this is that different people bring different opinions, ideas, perspectives, and strengths to the table. Instead of simply tolerating or accepting these differences, we should celebrate them. We should value these differences. This is what any good CEO does. They get their different subject matter experts and get their input to come up with the best solution. Another way to think of synergy is when you put two pieces of wood together. One piece of wood by itself isn't that strong, but when you put two together, the overall strength increases by more than 2 times. With synergy, 1 plus 1 can equal 3, 10, or 100. Think of how individual units can work together to create something even bigger. Another example is the human body. There are many individual parts that are amazing in their own right, but all the parts together create something amazing. So again, habits 4 through 6 deal with relationships. These 3 habits can help you have effective and interdependent relationships with others.
There's one set of habits where he talks about 3 habits. One is the paradigm of win-win. All those that we discussed earlier also fit in. Win-lose, lose-lose. Lose-lose is the first quadrant of that prisoner's dilemma. Win-lose, lose-win. There is also this no deal and win-win. So when we imbibe this habit of looking at every one of those transactions as win-win, it becomes more meaningful, and you also grow this habit, which is one of the very good leadership habits. This is a little different from matchers, but I'll discuss that when we come to the discussion stage. Would you have any other question? The second one is, of course, listening. Listening is a habit that has been discussed earlier, but seeking to understand first before seeking to be understood is an important aspect. We want to spell out, tell what we have rather than want to listen to the other. It may be a good habit to create as far as listening is concerned. The third one is synergy. To give you an example, most of you may know Leander Paes and Mahesh Bhupati. When Leander Paes and Mahesh Bhupati came together and played doubles, they were ranked number 1 in the world. Individually, each one was ranked something like 300, 160 and all those. But when they came together, synergy played a huge part, and they were ranked number 1. There is the cooperation that helped get them to number 1 spot. Synergy is an important aspect that we look for, and therefore it is important to appreciate others' skills, talents, way of doing things, etc., and we learn from that also. Right? And any organization or company will have people who have different skill sets. Right? It is the manager who looks at all these and be able to put them together as a recipe for success.
I have one doubt. Yeah. So there is one theory which says that we should just focus on the process and what we're doing now instead of the result in mind. But the second point says begin with the end in mind. Like these both are contradictory, right?
Ramsan, I'll add one more point to what you're saying. The begin with the end in mind is about doing again. And what you told about this thing, focus on the process and not the result. The result is what you get. The end in mind is about what you will be giving, what you will be doing. The result is what you will be getting. So focus on the process and not on the result. Result is what you will be getting. But the Covey model of end in mind is end is what you will be doing at the end.
So there is one more habit that when we imbibe, it helps us grow better. So shall I move on to that, which is the last one that I wanted to discuss? Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. So let me share the screen again, which has to do with how one is motivated towards purpose. Where does this Wikipedia and other kind of efforts come about? Okay. I'll share the video directly because it's powerfully put.
The science is really surprising. The science is a little bit freaky, okay? We are not as endlessly manipulable and as predictable as you would think. There's a whole set of unbelievably interesting studies. I want to give you two that call into question this idea that if you reward something, you get more of the behavior you want. If you punish something, you get less of it. So let's go from London to the mean streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, in the northeastern part of the United States. And let's talk about a study done at MIT, Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Here's what they did. They took a whole group of students, and they gave them a set of challenges. Things like memorizing strings of digits, solving word puzzles, other kinds of spatial puzzles, even physical tasks like throwing a ball through a hoop. Okay, they gave them these challenges, and they said to incentivize their performance, they gave them 3 levels of rewards. Okay, so if you did pretty well, you got a small monetary reward. If you did medium well, you got a medium monetary reward. And if you did really well, if you were one of the top performers, you got a large cash prize. Okay. We've seen this movie before. This is essentially a typical motivation scheme within organizations, right? We reward the very top performers, we ignore the low performers, and the other folks kind of in the middle. Okay, you get a little bit. So what happens? They do the test, they have these incentives. Here's what they found out. 1, as long as the task involved only mechanical skill, bonuses worked as they would be expected. The higher the pay, the better their performance. Okay, that makes sense. But here's what happens. But once the task called for even rudimentary cognitive skill, a larger reward led to poorer performance. Now this is strange, right? A larger reward led to poorer performance? How can that possibly be? Now what's interesting about this is that these folks here who did this are all economists, 2 at MIT, 1 at the University of Chicago, 1 at Carnegie Mellon, okay? The top tier of the economics profession. And they're reaching this conclusion that seems contrary to what a lot of us learned in economics, which is that the higher the reward, the better their performance. And they're saying that once you get above rudimentary cognitive skill, it's the other way around. Which seems like this kind of, the idea that these rewards don't work that way seems vaguely left-wing and socialist, doesn't it? It's kind of this kind of weird socialist conspiracy. For those of you who have those conspiracy theories, I want to point out the notoriously left-wing socialist group that financed the research, the Federal Reserve Bank. So this is the mainstream of the mainstream coming to a conclusion that's quite surprising. It seems to defy the laws of behavioral physics. So this is strange. It's strange funny. So what do? They say, this is freaky. Let's go test it somewhere else. Maybe that $50 or $60 prize isn't sufficiently motivating for an MIT student.
They come to Madurai.
Let's go to a place where $50 is actually more significant relatively. Right? So let's take the experiment. We're going to go to Madurai, India, rural India, where $50, $60, whatever the number was, is actually a significant sum of money. So they replicated the experiment in India roughly as follows. Small rewards, the equivalent of 2 weeks' salary. Small performance, low performance, 2 weeks' salary. Medium performance, about a month's salary. High performance, about 2 months' salary. Okay, so those are real good incentives. Okay, so you're going to get a different result here. Well, what happened, though, was that the people offered the medium reward did no better than the people offered the small reward. But this time around, the people offered the top reward. They did worst of all. Higher incentives led to worse performance. What's interesting about this is that it actually isn't all that anomalous. This has been replicated over and over and over again by psychologists, by some extent by sociologists, and by economists. Over and over and over again. For simple, straightforward tasks, those kinds of incentives, if you do this, then you get that, they're great. For tasks that are algorithmic, set of rules where you have to just follow along and get a right answer, if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, outstanding. But when the task gets more complicated, when it requires some conceptual, creative thinking, those kinds of motivators demonstrably don't work. Fact, money is a motivator at work, but in a slightly strange way. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. What's curious about, there's another paradox here, which is that the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table. Pay people enough so that they're not thinking about money and they're thinking about the work. Now, once you do that, it turns out there are 3 factors that the science shows lead to better performance, not to mention personal satisfaction. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Autonomy is our desire to be self-directed, to direct our own lives. Now, in many ways, traditional notions of management run afoul of that. Management is great if you want compliance, but if you want engagement, which is what we want in the workforce today as people are doing more complicated, sophisticated things, self-direction is better. Let me give you some examples of this, of almost radical forms of self-direction in the workplace that lead to good results. Let's start with this company right here, Atlassian, an Australian company. It's a software company, and they do something really cool. Once a quarter, on a Thursday afternoon, they say to their developers, for the next 24 hours, you can work on anything you want. You can work on it the way you want. You can work on it with whomever you want. All we ask is that you show the results to the company at the end of those 24 hours in this fun kind of meeting, not a star chamber session, but this fun meeting with beer and cake and fun and other things like that. It turns out that that one day of pure, undiluted autonomy has led to a whole array of fixes for existing software, a whole array of ideas for new products that otherwise had never emerged. One day. Now, this is not an if-then incentive. This is not the sort of thing that I would have done 3 years ago before I knew this research. I would have said, you want people to be creative and innovative? Give them a freaking innovation bonus. If you can do something cool, I'll give you $2,500. They're not doing this at all. They're essentially saying, you probably want to do something interesting. Let me just get out of your way. One day of autonomy produces things that have never emerged. Okay, let's talk about mastery. Mastery is our urge to get better at stuff. We like to get better at stuff. This is why people play musical instruments on the weekend. You got all these people who are acting in ways that seem irrational economically. They play musical instruments on weekends. Why? It's not going to get them a mate. It's not going to make them any money. Why are they doing it? Because it's fun, because you get better at it, and that's satisfying. Go back in time a little bit. I imagine this if I went to my first economics professor, a woman named Mary Alice Schulman, and I went to her in 1983 and said, Professor Schulman, can I talk to you after class for a moment? Yeah. I got this inkling. I got this idea for a business model. I just want to run it past you. Here's how it would work. You get a bunch of people around the world who are doing highly skilled work, but they're willing to do it for free and volunteer their time, 20, sometimes 30 hours a week. Okay, she's looking at you somewhat skeptically there. Oh, but I'm not done. And then what they create, they give it away rather than sell it. It's going to be huge. I mean, she truly would have thought I was insane. Okay, it seemed to fly in the face of so many things. But what do you have? You have Linux powering 1 out of 4 corporate servers in Fortune 500 companies, Apache powering more than the majority of web servers, Wikipedia. What's going on? Why are people doing this? Why are these people, many of whom are technically sophisticated, highly skilled people who have jobs? Okay? They have jobs. They're working at jobs for pay, doing sophisticated technological work. And yet, during their limited discretionary time, they do equally, if not more, technically sophisticated work, not for their employer, but for someone else for free. That's a strange economic behavior. Economists who look into it, why are they doing this? It's overwhelmingly clear. Challenge and mastery, along with making a contribution. That's it. What you see more and more is a rise of what you might call the purpose motive. Is that more and more organizations want to have some kind of transcendent purpose. Partly because it makes coming to work better, partly because that's the way to get better talent. And what we're seeing now is, in some ways, when the profit motive becomes unmoored from the purpose motive, bad things happen. Bad things ethically sometimes, but also bad things just like not good stuff, like crappy products, like lame services, like uninspiring places to work. That when the profit motive is paramount, or when it becomes completely unhitched from the purpose motive, it's just, people don't do great things. More and more organizations are realizing this and sort of disturbing the categories between what's profit and what's purpose. And I think that actually heralds something interesting. And I think that the organizations that are flourishing, whether they're profit, for profit, or somewhere in between, are animated by this purpose model. Let me give you a couple of examples. Here's the founder of Skype. He says, our goal is to be disruptive, but in the cause of making the world a better place. Pretty good purpose. Here's Steve Jobs. I want to put a ding in the universe. All right? That's the kind of thing that might get you up in the morning and racing to go to work. So I think that, that we are purpose maximizers, not only profit maximizers. I think the science shows that we care about mastery very, very deeply. And the science shows that we want to be self-directed. And I think that the big takeaway here is that if we start treating people like people and not assuming that they're simply horses, slower, smaller, better smelling horses, if we get past this kind of ideology of carrots and sticks and look at the science, I think we can actually build organizations and work lives that make us better off, but I also think they have the promise to make our world just a little bit better.
So, connecting to a purpose, as far as an individual is concerned, is also something that fires us up. It energizes us. Every one of the individuals who you see with so much energy is because they have this purpose at the root of their working. The purpose could be very different. Each one of them was different. Right? But every one of those purposes connected to make the world a better place to be. Right? And that gives the satisfaction that is unparalleled. Discussed 4 habits. Think win-win. Seek to understand before you seek to be understood. And then look at synergy in terms of accomplishing something. And finally, connecting to a purpose, whether it is something that you have created or you are connecting to some other purpose that is currently on. All these 4 habits will take you from an I framework to a we framework, so that globally everybody would be benefited. And therefore it will come back to you